Welcome back to another edition of the Carter Cooper Noah podcast. I'm Cooper Ryle.
I'm Noah Richardson.
I'm Carter Gallo.
Let's get right into it. Carter, would you like to start us off today?
Yeah, hockey. They got a big tournament coming up this week in the South Bend Crossover Showcase. Big game Saturday against Zionsville at Notre Dame, followed by versus Hamilton Southeast. Then tonight they have a big game against the Bloomington Blades at the Icebox, and then they finish it off against Fort Wayne Carroll. No, I don't know about you, but I think if they want to do good in this tournament, they just got to stay out of the penalty box.
Yeah, I mean, there's been too many penalties the last couple of games. It's hard when you're good, but then you have one of your best players getting penalty, and you can't like the other team has a power play, and that's how they score most of their goals.
Yeah, you like the physical play, but there's an extent to it. You can't have your top guys just taking stupid penalties.
Like you have to know when it's enough. Sometimes penalties just happen, but as a player, you have to be I know not to do this and that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being physical and being nasty out there.
Right.
But there's got to be some extent to it. But other than that, I really think that they have a good shot at coming out with a good record this weekend. Tough game against Zionsville at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that they'll fare well this weekend against a tough competition. This is more of the tougher part of their schedule, the tournament season. They're going down south, playing a lot better teams than around here. So if they can just play well, fare well against their competition, and continue to play well, score goals, stay out of the penalty box, I think they'll fare well, and I think it's only going to help them further down the road.
Yeah, I mean, they've been struggling the past couple of weeks. I mean, going 1-2 last week. So I mean, tonight at 9:30 against Bloomington, if they win, that should be a huge confidence booster for the rest.
Yeah, I think so, and especially since their division outside of Adams is a little weaker this year. St. Joe isn't as good.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a couple tough losses against LSJ, but I think if they can clean those mistakes up this weekend against a lot better teams, it's going to totally minimize the mistakes against the teams around here.
So moving on to basketball, the boys play Concord tonight. Carter, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're coming off a nice win against Clay. They had 4 guys score double figures. I think that they'll fare well against Concord tonight. Concord isn't the most tough opponent that they're going to face tonight or this season, but I think they'll fare well against Concord tonight.
What about you, Noah?
Yeah, I think they should be pretty good tonight. It should be a great win.
They look like they're starting to hit their stride after that loss to Crown Point.
Yeah.
They're coming back and playing teams around here. I think they'll beat up on the competition around here.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just come down to later in the season if they can beat a Crown Point team or someone like that.
Yeah, like last year, we went all the way to semis. So
the boys definitely didn't have the start to the season that they were hoping for, at least not compared to the last few years. But like you said, they're getting back into their stride, so they should be back into the regular shape that they were.
But sometimes that's good for a team. You know you're at, and you can set goals for further on in the season. And I think they are doing that, and they are looking to accomplish those goals throughout the season.
Well, and they're also a young team.
Yeah.
Like Carter Hickey's been on varsity for a couple years, but they're still young. They have a lot of juniors on the squad.
Mm-hmm.
Even some freshmen too, so they're still going to grow throughout the year and throughout these next couple of years. But tonight, I don't think that matters. I think they'll win tonight.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely what the boys football was doing when football was still in season. Like, they didn't have the best start to the season that they were hoping for, but they set their goals mid-season, and that's how they beat Mishawaka. All right, so let's talk about some college football now. Noah, would you like to start us off on that one?
Yeah, so the Final Four teams are set at LSU at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, and Oklahoma at 4. I think the committee got it right. I'm really liking this top 4. Oklahoma just sliding in after the Georgia lost to LSU in the SEC championship game. Oklahoma barely beat Baylor, but Utah lost in the Pac-12 to Oregon. So, but I think for the Final 4 games, LSU plays Oklahoma, and I think LSU's going to keep rolling on.
Absolutely.
They're so dominant. I don't think anyone can stop that LSU offense. And then you got Ohio State playing Clemson, the 1-2, and I'm liking Clemson in this one. Even though they're undefeated, they've been referenced as basically kind of like an underdog because they weren't as good as they were last year. They're really underestimated by a lot of teams, and I think they have this true contest against a good team in Ohio State, and I think they're going to show the nation who they are.
Well, I think what's crazy is even after Clemson almost lost to North Carolina, and you can argue that they should have lost, ever since then, everyone's thought that they're just not as good as last year. But they're returning the same team pretty much as last year. As much as I want to pick them to beat Ohio State, I really can't see anyone beating Ohio State. They're just too powerful. They have being led by Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins on offense. And then as Trevor Lawrence is going to have to deal with Chase Young the whole game in the back of his head, he's going to have Chase Young coming at him the whole game. So I really like Ohio State in this one, but I'm not going to be surprised if Clemson wins. And I don't see LSU losing to Oklahoma. If they were to lose to Ohio State or Clemson, I wouldn't be surprised, but they're just way too dominant. And it showed at the awards ceremony last night. They stole so many awards. Joe Burrow had 2 awards, I think. And Ed Orgeron won Head Coach of the Year, and that wide receiver,
Jamar Chase,
yeah, he won Receiver of the Year. So they're just way too powerful. But
Yeah, so I definitely would take LSU over Oklahoma because LSU's had like 3 or 4 games where it's been like hearsay for quite a while. Like they struggled. Like you look at Kansas State, they lost to Kansas State and they allowed them to score 48 points, and then they also beat Iowa State, but they only beat them by 1 point. And then it comes to TCU, and they only beat TCU by a touchdown or so, maybe 1 point more, maybe 1 point less. But some will argue that TCU was robbed because on the play that basically ended the game, Oklahoma was trying to run the ball, and a lot of people said that Hurts was short and it should have been a turnover for TCU, and Oklahoma got a little bit of a favor right there as they were ruled with a first down, but that was a close game right there. And then in the championship against Baylor, they only beat them by 7 and they took them into overtime against a team that was 2 years ago 1-11.
Well, I mean, a win's a win though, and they've been Oklahoma's been grinding all season. I mean, obviously their defense is pretty poor, and transfer Jalen Hurts, he's been doing really good for Oklahoma this season, and he's actually going to be the first quarterback to ever start for 2 teams in the college football playoffs. So, I mean, good job for him, but they're coming like it's a tough LSU team. I mean, not only is the offense good, but the defense has just keep improving the whole season, and I don't think it'll be close.
So going into Ohio State against Clemson, Ohio State's got a stacked team. They got Chase Young. They got Justin Fields. They got J.K. Dobbins. They got Benjamin Victor. They got K.J. Hill. They have a really, really good team. And Clemson has a good team, too, if you look at them. They have, Isaiah Simmons. They have Travis Etienne. They have Trevor Lawrence. They have Justin Ross. They have Amari Rodgers. They have T. Higgins. But they haven't shown me quite as much this year of what they're capable of compared to what they have years in the past. Like Clemson years in the past have been good. But as you stated earlier, how people argued that Clemson probably should have lost to North Carolina even though they didn't because it was by some saving grace. That's the Clemson team that I've thought that they were all year. I've just personally had this opinion that they've been quite a bit overrated, and it's their time for them to prove me wrong. But right now, I'm sitting at OSU to win it. But I personally think LSU is going to win it all because I think they play with a lot of heart. And Ohio State did struggle against Wisconsin. And in a game like the college football playoffs, you can't rely on the second half to come back. You have to rely on the whole game.
I mean, if it comes down to LSU and Ohio State in the championship game, I think Joe Burrow should show Ohio State what he's made of. He went to Ohio State. He transferred to LSU. I think he's going to go in with definitely a grudge on his shoulder, knowing that, he used to go there. And I think he's going to dominate. I think he's going to dominate this whole college football playoff. He is that good, and he showed it through the whole entire season, and he will win the Heisman this weekend.
No question.
Yeah, he's just unbelievably really good, and his draft stock has rose so much that they're saying he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft now. Cincinnati Bengals.
Kind of like Baker Mayfield.
Right.
He had a huge rise at Oklahoma, and he could potentially be the number 1 pick like Baker Mayfield. And he could win the Heisman just like Baker Mayfield. So I think Joe Burrow's going to win the Heisman. But Chase Young is going to be the factor for every single team that Ohio State plays in the playoff. Because I can guarantee that any of the quarterbacks that he's going to play against has faced anything like him at all. He changes the game. He's always in the minds of the quarterback. He's always going to be in his head. So they got to get rid of it quick, but I think Chase Young is the X factor for Ohio State and really this entire playoff. Yeah.
So do you guys think that if Chase Young didn't get suspended for those 2 games that he would have won Heisman over Joe Burrow?
No, I mean, for as much I want to say he's really good, but nowadays as a defensive player, you can't really win the Heisman. I mean, look at Jonathan Taylor's stats. I mean, they are better stats than when Derrick Henry won the Heisman, and he didn't even make the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's so hard nowadays if you're not a quarterback to win the Heisman because, I mean, people just focus on quarterbacks now. But what they're not seeing is how good Chase Young really is. And if he came back those 2 games, he wasn't suspended, I don't think it made a difference.
Well, I definitely think is he a finalist?
He is a finalist, yeah.
But I don't think he would have won regardless. But I think he would have had a much better case if he didn't get suspended for those 2 games, because who knows what he could have done in those 2 games. So, but regardless, Joe Burrow's going to win the Heisman. It shouldn't really be a question, but who knows what Chase Young could have done. It's going to be a treat to watch him play on Sundays in the NFL.
Yeah, it really will be.
So if Burrow didn't win Heisman per chance, would you say that it would be Jalen Hurts that won it?
No, I would say it'd be Justin Fields. I mean, he has been tremendous this whole year, throwing only 1 interception. I mean, for a first-year starter, that is really good. And, you know, Ohio State has been really good under the new coach, and
Fields doesn't have that many passing yards per game because Ohio State's more of a running team, but when Fields does pass and when he is on his game, he throws darts.
He does, yeah.
All right, Carter, so would you like to talk a little bit about college basketball?
Well, certainly I'm biased because I'm a big Illinois fan, but Illinois just beat number 5 Michigan at home, and they were favored to win the game, which I was pretty surprised because Michigan is really good, even though they lost to Louisville. But there have been so many upsets so far in college basketball. There have been so many top 5 teams that have lost. Like Maryland almost lost at home to Illinois. It took a 30-foot 3-pointer by Anthony Cowan to beat Illinois. So I don't know what's going on with all these top teams. Like, I mean, Michigan lost to Illinois. Louisville lost to Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a lot of upsets going on in the world of college basketball this year. The Louisville upset happened on the same day as the Maryland upset. Maryland also got upset by Penn State, 76-69.
Yeah. Penn State's a good team, but, like, Maryland, that's 2 straight losses, or that's 2 straight games that they haven't played very good. And if that's going to continue, if these first 2 games of the Big Ten schedule, if that's any sign, I don't know about Maryland. Same thing with, like, Michigan State. They got off to not a great start. So I don't know if this is just a trend in college basketball or if this is just, like, the Big Ten being such a tough conference. But I don't know what's going on with these top teams.
Another team that's really been struggling to hit their shots in the past few games is the former number 1 team, Louisville. If you look at their last game against Texas Tech, they as a team went 18 for 53, which is a 34% shooting percentage.
Well, Texas Tech plays such good defense under Chris Beard, but I mean, if you're the number 1 team, you got to put on a better showing than that. I mean, I get that you have bad games, but I mean,
but like to an unranked team getting beat.
Yeah, and they just came off that big win against Michigan at home.
Yeah. And with the Illinois-Michigan game, I mean, Michigan coming at 5, Illinois is unranked. You know, they're having the unranked team as a favorite. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't understand. And in Michigan, they came in, like, they were unranked before, and they got that huge win. Then they're automatically in the top 5. Like,
well, that
makes no sense to me.
I get that part because they came off wins against Gonzaga and North Carolina.
I mean, they did, but, like, traveling all the way, and they can't, like, make their way up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
mean, people were arguing for them to be number 1. That's way too high, but, I mean, they're a good team, and they'll figure it out. Same thing with Michigan State. They've had a rough start, but they'll figure it out. But I don't know. That's not – I mean, you can't say it's bad for college basketball, but, like, if this is, like, a trend, this is not good. If you don't want to be a top 5 team,
right? I mean, and in Michigan, it's another tough contest tomorrow. They play number 10 Oregon.
Yeah,
at 12.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to really step up their game, and they're at home too. So who knows?
Well, and Oregon they lost like in the last minute to North Carolina, so that's not a bad loss, and they're a good team. So Michigan, you got your hands full, even losing to Illinois. Like
a team that's really impressed me this season is number 19 Dayton.
Yeah, they played really well in that Maui tournament
against Kansas.
Yeah.
They almost had that upset against Kansas, but they just couldn't get it in the long run towards overtime. But the announcers during the game were even saying that Dayton has been a dominant team this year, and that they are actually like a really good team, despite like them being unranked. They think that they have a chance to compete for a few things.
Butler's another mid-major team that's in the top 25, and they're a good team. They beat Florida at home by 12. I mean, watch out for them. And I know Memphis is technically considered a mid-major team, but they're stacked. The number one recruiting class, they're getting
Penny Hardaway up coaching them. And
they're getting James Wiseman back in a little bit. I saw that if James Wiseman would have served his suspension the first time, he would have been eligible for the game against Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And that's at Tennessee.
Right.
And Tennessee doesn't lose at home. They're on like a 30-something game win streak at home. So that's big. And I know they probably weren't thinking that when it happened, because I thought he shouldn't have gotten suspended, because that's kind of a dumb reason why. But that really hurts you against a good Tennessee team. So, I mean, the Memphis will still be good, and they'll be playing in the tournament, but it's just something to think about.
In your guys' opinion, who do you think should be the new number one after Louisville went down?
I think Ohio State should be number one. I mean, they're undefeated. They've had some huge wins. They're blowing everyone out. I don't see why Ohio State should not be number one.
I definitely think it could be Ohio State as well. They're like one of the only teams that are undefeated in the top 10, if not the only team.
Yeah, they are the only team that's undefeated in the top 10.
Yeah, they are that good this year. And so some people understand, or some people argue that Kansas should be number one over Ohio State because they have so many good wins and they have such a good team, and that their only loss is to Duke. And I understand that their loss was to Duke, but Duke is now like out of the top 5. They're number 7. They probably will go up due to all these losses, and they just lost at home to Stephen F. Austin. So this has been this edition of the Cooper Carter and Noah podcast. I'm Cooper Ryle.
Noah Richardson.
Carter Gallo.
Signing off.